Show. You can just call me Fuego for short, and yeah, as you can see by the terrific tower of tomes that sits behind me, Sideking, El Rey, as I so affectionately call him, is indeed my favorite author. And yes, I have read all of his published fiction, whether shorts and novellas and every big-ass paperweight that he has put together over the years. And I'm so very excited for the Institute coming later this year, in September, right around my birthday. But I was thinking the other day after I got done doing a rewatch and reread, at least, of just like kind of going over some of the script, and then most importantly, reading the foreword that Sideking had about it for Storm of the Century right there. He's got a very awesome introduction that basically goes into the creative process and just how the gestation of the idea initially happened, and it's very insightful. And reading that got me to start thinking that I have never done a video about Sideking's non-fiction output. And because that's the thing, man, I mean, there's nothing like having your favorite author tell you a story, you know? I mean, you're just, you know, just being transported into another world, another dimension in King's case, or multiverse, or whatever, and just, you know, you are so enwrapped in it, and, you know, I just love that escapist aspect, whether it's, you know, I personally prefer the fantastical because, you know, I was always an imaginative small kid and stuff like that. You know, that's probably why I was attracted to, you know, fantasy, science fiction, later on horror and stuff like that. Is, I mean, you're watching me here on the horror show, right? But it's very different to have your favorite, like one of your favorite people telling you a story. But it's a totally another experience. It's totally another experience to feel like you're just hanging around shooting the shit with them. You know, like you're just having a conversation with somebody that, you know, albeit in these cases it's one-sided, but nonetheless it's very cool when King addresses us all as constant readers, those who have been with him through and through, you know, through the test of time. And I think that's definitely one of the most endearing things and makes me just appreciate and respect him as much as I do, beyond the fact that he's my favorite author. He's a lot of people's favorite author, and with good reason in my estimation. But I do feel like one of the things that makes Sideking so endearing to people is that personal touch, where it feels like in those forewords that you're just having a conversation with him. You know, you're talking person to person as opposed to him telling you a story, I guess is the point that I'm trying to make of all of this. And that's why some may find when King isn't telling stories to be boring, but I sure as hell don't. Especially, I mean, it's like, it's for those people who really enjoy the supplemental material on DVDs that have turned into Blu-rays, that have turned into 4Ks, although something that I'm sure buddies of mine like, you know, Lee from Drum Dums and, you know, others who are, and Cody, Cecil, I mean, guys like us who buy physical media still and really pride ourselves on it, it's really disappointing to see those sort of extras starting to disappear, commentary tracks and extensive behind the scenes and things like that. And I find that it's at the big budget level that we see it less, and it's the smaller, more personal indie films that you know, that continue to do it, and that is where King obviously started, you know, rags to riches, you know, working, you know, teaching and working at laundromats and doing all these odd jobs while he was trying to write and trying to find his voice in a lot of ways, and slowly trying to get published and find his big break and stuff. And so I think that's still one of the reasons why so often we get these really awesome, like, introductions, forewords, you know, afterwards, whatever they may be, and I genuinely cherish those. I'm so stoked that, you know, King's progeny, none other than Joe Hill, he really likes to do those, and even more so than his dad, he will do ones that are extended or completely different in the audio versions of his books. I just remember listening to The Fireman, and I'm like, oh, well, this is different, this is cool, you know? And so, yes, Sideking, nonfiction, as I blathered on just about how much I enjoy those particular things. And I mean, if I'm just gonna think right off the top of my head, a few of my personal favorite of these introductory, forward, essay type things from Sideking, I mean, it's really tough to ignore, you know, The Dark Tower, The Gunslinger. When he revised it and updated it, he did a really fantastic like little essay of sorts called The Importance of Being 19, I think it was. I have it right back here because, you know, obviously I just rereading, you know, The Gunslinger. I didn't tell any of you guys on the Sideking, you know, Hail to Stephen King Facebook group, but nonetheless, I just want to make sure I'm getting the test. Okay, it's called On Being 19, and a few other things. And this is a fantastic foreword. It's only in the deluxe re-released editions of The Gunslinger where it's been revised and updated and everything, as I said earlier. So that's a really fantastic one. I also love the intro that he did for a couple different re-releases of Pet Sematary, where he just gives so much interesting insight to the process of, you know, locking the book away and all of the personal things going on in his life where he drew inspiration. Boy, he's written some great stuff about it. I mean, the list goes on and on as I'm looking at you know, when he was finishing the, you know, second few turns of the wheel, when he did the stretch run for The Dark Tower, there's some more interesting stuff there. Yeah, guys, so yeah, that's just a little insight, a few that come like right off the top of my head. But yes, as far as Sideking nonfiction goes, oh, he has a great one in The Stand as well for the expanded and the re-released version of it. Oh man, On Being Bachman, that's another great one. You guys are gonna drill me for the ones that I forgot in the comments, but that's fine. I still love you. So yeah, the first one that comes to mind for me, obviously, sitting right there, Danse Macabre, and I'm actually gonna pull the other version of it from the bottom shelf here, which is like re-release stuff. And so I have my original hardcover up there, which is cool, but they did do a re-release of this, which had an additional essay. When was the re-release? Okay, re-release was 2010. So I guess the same time they were re-releasing On Writing was also when they re-released this. But this is really cool because this is King doing both. He gives personal insight into like just how his perception and taste in pop culture and all of its various mediums for scary stuff, you know, changed over the years, you know, what he likes in each medium, you know, whether it's, you know, whether it's writers, whether it's television, whether it's films, whatever. And he has a new essay in here called What's Scary in the re-released version. So, I mean, if you're a completist like me, you have to have the hardcover, which, you know, I found it at a thrift store and it's seen its day. But this is especially cool because it eventually there's all kinds of cool little footnote things where he gives additional insight into some references that he makes. And I mean, he goes really deep, especially into like horror films where he's talking about, I mean, he talks about, you know, creature and, you know, Universal Monsters type stuff. And then he talks about social horror. He talks about all these different things. He raves about, you know, Matheson and, you know, Bloch and all these different people, Hitchcock. I mean, the list goes on, and there is just list after list of recommendation for however you like to consume horror. This is such a pivotal book to have. And while I must say, with the exception of maybe the Red Sox one that I'll talk about here in a little bit, I'd say if you just want to trace the seeds of what inspired King and as he ascended to the throne, because this book was originally published in, I want to say 82, 81, something like that. Let's double check here real quick. 81, okay. Yeah, and portions of the book had previously appeared in Playboy magazine. So that was, I'm assuming, just little essay bits that they compiled together here. But yeah, this is, as it describes it on the back, informal, engaging, tremendous fun, and tremendously informative. And that is the truth, because that's the way King always is, whether he's talking about other people's work or whether, like I said in all those intros for Pet Sematary and, you know, Being 19 and all that other stuff, he's just talking about his own work. But it's really, really interesting when he goes into the stuff that he liked both growing up and that he respected as he was achieving fortune and fame. So this one is definitely of the importance to have, and I can get it back on the shelf extremely, extremely cool. We will get to the other thing that's right next to it here in a little bit. But, so, yes, Dance Macabre, if you want King informally discussing his taste in horror, his personal observations and things like that, and it's of that same just informality and just shooting the shit with one of your favorite people, man. It's so good. So, as we skim, obviously I mentioned already that the Bachman Books has a terrific recommendation, or a terrific just explanation, not recommendation. Well, he recommends 4 of the 5 books in there, if I recall correctly, and this is the one with yep, it's got excuse me, 4. Yeah, man, was I putting thinner in there with it, but nonetheless, yes, on being Bachman, or the importance of being Bachman is what I believe it's called. Awesome, insightful also, and just cool to see the experiment that he wanted to pull with you know, just seeing if the quality of his work would shine through, or if it was all his name, and, you know, it's the name of royalty. So hey, you know, the one thing that I do have to say to kind of pop that bubble a little bit, because I always try to speak candidly and, you know, of my own personal opinion on this show, is that, yeah, it was, I understand the importance of being Bachman, but the tone of a lot of that writing was drastically different. I still... And yet, there are certain things dubbed King that I felt could have been Bachman books, like Apt Pupil, for instance. But, so anyway, yes, very, very good. The Bachman books, if you want to read that essay. But we're going to skim along to the next nonfiction thing that he wrote, which, and the Wheel of Ka continues going and going and going, and boom, stops there with On Writing. And I'm actually going to pull both of these books out since they were released right about the same time. I know. Be kind to your precious bookshelf, Fuego. But this is such a dope book. This is my favorite of all the nonfiction stuff that King has done, obviously. On Writing is... It's so intriguing because this is like full-on autobiography slash... the second half of it is really giving tips and pointers and stuff, and yet in the 3 different introductions that he has in here, 3 different forewords, you know, all of which are increasingly shorter and shorter, you know, he does everything from shout out his editor, you know, Chuck something, I forget his name, the guy who was helping him out with like pretty much everything here, but he gives some interesting analogies. The Dixie Cup analogy in the first foreword is pretty cool. Then he also gives recommendations about a couple other people who wrote, you know, good introductions to writing and, you know, honing your skills, the elements of style, by William Strunk Jr. and E.B. White. He actually, so even here he's giving recommendations as he's giving his own pro tips about writing, and, you know, but very humbly and in a suggestive manner, as opposed to a really beat you over the head manner, except when he gets humorous about driving his point home. That's when it's fun. But yeah, Chuck Verrill, his editor at the time and stuff. But so, yes, this is half autobiography, talking about his childhood, growing up impoverished without a father, the struggles of his mother, some insight into his siblings and stuff, and then he shifts gears for the back half of it, and that's when he, in a very natural and fluid manner, segues even the flow and the narrative of this, and I'm sure his editor had some help with him on that, but yeah, it just very naturally, you know, just shifts gears into him, very much like the teacher said, because King was a teacher, you know, and that he really approaches this book in that manner, in the fact that he compels your attention so much with his like shift and segue and stuff, that it feels just very... it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb when it gets to the instruction, because you're just that engaged with the process and where you've gone so far and how it transitions. And so there's terrific advice in here, and it was also re-released. I'm not going to pull it out right there because those books are like to the brim, and I had stuff falling out earlier when I was trying to do a little bit of slight rearrangement. My tower, you guys aren't even seeing the bottom level with all the Cemetery Dance stuff and the different special releases like Desperation and Insomnia and stuff. My second tower is already full, and as I approach the 150th episode of this program, yeah, boy, I don't know. You'll see, guys. You'll see. But On Writing had a 10-year anniversary deluxe version. It's only a soft cover, unfortunately, that was released, but that one is very cool as well. because it has an updated reading list, because he has even another reading list, you know, even beyond the Dance Macabre stuff that we're talking about here. So, yes. The same time that On Writing came out, there was a specific to book clubs, if I remember correctly, and it was called Secret Windows. Not to be confused with, you know, Secret Window, Secret Garden, I want to say. The one from 4 Past Midnight, which, that's okay. It was made into the Johnny Depp movie Secret Window, which is also, also just okay. Johnny Depp and John Turturro. But this is very cool, and I know you can track it down online for a rather reasonable price, like around, you know, 20-something bucks or whatever, but this is nothing but essays and like different forewords. I know he introduced like a straw book and stuff. Let's jump right through this. So there's actually an introduction to this book by his buddy Peter Straub, and then, you know, you've got a foreword to Night Shift that a lot of people hadn't seen, and then a bunch of different very cool essays that King did. One is called On Becoming a Brand Name. You also have an excerpt from Dance Macabre, which was horror fiction. I mean, he talks about the Ballad of a Flexible Bullet. There's a really cool thing about how it happened in here. There's more from, he has something called Banned Books and Other Concerns, What Stephen King Does for Love. I mean, there's he also introduced Jack Ketchum's The Girl Next Door. I mean, so this is really an interesting, like, there's small, short little essays about short stories that he's written. There's introductions that other people have done for him that people thought were interesting. There's vice versa, intros that he's done for other people. So this is really, I mean, it's got a very lengthy list of all kinds of different things on here. Ever It's Raw Meat and Other Weird Questions. I mean, a new introduction to John Fell's The Collector. This is full of all kinds of interesting Kingicisms, and I know that there is at least, like, boy, I'm trying to remember. It's been so long since I've looked at this. This is one that I believe the anniversary is next year. Yeah, 2000, next year. So I'm actually very excited once the year of 19 is done to give both of these a proper reread and really just kind of go into it. But yes, this is really like the rarest of the rare if you're into just reading King nonfiction stuff, like I mentioned. And yeah, go to your local used bookstore if possible. Yeah, and I know you can probably find it on the Amazon sellers and various other dope places, but that's the book that I'm just handling right there, The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon. We are actually going to be doing at some point this year, as well as at some point this year, we're going to be doing anniversaries of both of those books, because they are both also turning 20 years old this year. Get back on your shelf, motherfucker. Okay, yes. So next up we have, I hate to say it, it might be my least favorite, although there is one other book that I'm about to show y'all, and I don't want stuff falling down there. All right. So this is probably the most polarizing, since so many people hate Boston sports teams. But in 2004, during their amazing year when they finally broke the curse and all that craziness, Stephen King and a writer by the name of Stuart Onan, they did a bunch of correspondence back and forth. Onan was like a beat writer for the Sox, if I'm not mistaken, and obviously King, a long-time, diehard fan. And yeah, in October of 2004, which was, oh boy, 15 years ago now. Isn't that crazy? And now Boston's just winning all the titles. It's nuts. But, so yeah, they, as it's described here, 2 diehard Boston Red Sox fans chronicle the historic 2004 season. I skimmed through this many years ago, and I have to say, very much like the short story in Nightmares and Dreamscapes, where it chronicles the season of his son's Little League team, I can't remember much distinctive that really stuck out to me here. I'm trying to remember. There's all kinds of newspaper clippings. There's their back and forth emails and correspondence. And I mean, this is probably more so if you, and there are some photos in here. Yep, there you go. Welcome to the New Year spring training. So basically, I think first and foremost, you would have to be a fan of the Red Sox. If you're not necessarily a fan of the Red Sox, but you're a real big fan of baseball, I'm neither. Baseball is probably my least favorite of the major American sports behind hockey, behind American football, behind basketball, behind soccer, or football as the rest of the world properly calls it. So, I mean, yeah, I'd rather watch paint dry a lot of the time than watch baseball, but as far as the King process goes, and something that King is passionate about, I know they did a 10-year anniversary for this book, or maybe, yeah, it was a 10-year anniversary a few years ago, obviously, because this is the 15th anniversary, but I have been very tempted to pick it up, just for the sheer fact that I'm such a collecting completist for King, but yeah, this is available as an audiobook, and I think I just might have to pick it up at some particular point. There's funny idioms here. I mean, turn the page, obviously, you know, the Seeger song, Beyond Thunderdome, the June Swoon, who are these guys, the ups and... I mean, if you're into just sports lore and stuff like that, I mean, 7 Seconds or Less is a great book that was written about the Phoenix Suns of old that I absolutely adored at the time in the Nash era. But I digress from discussing horror, just like King sometimes digresses from discussing horror himself. This is your other nonfiction that if it's what you're into, yeah, it's chilling there for you. And you can tell that as King was just kind of chilling, doing his thing, watching the Red Sox after he had finished the last couple Dark Tower books, he must have been a very relieved and happy man to see all of those proverbial monkeys off his back. So, yes, there we are. Make sure all of our ducks are back in a row. And now there is one other that well, actually, you know what? No, let's talk about this. This is one of the few soft covers that I have. I think it is available as a hardcover, but for me, it was really just about wanting the introductions here, really, because it's just reprintings of short stories that were turned into a few of his favorite movies. So you have The Shawshank Redemption, you have 1408, you have Children of the Corn, you have The Mangler, and you have Hearts in Atlantis. And King does 5 new essays. They're only like a couple pages each, where he talks about each of these films and just some personal insight into them. He dedicates this for Frank Darabont, who made my dreams real. That's pretty dope. So yeah, I mean, he just goes between all of these. Yeah, and they're very short intros. Only like a page or two for each of them. But then there's a very cool essay at the end, my 10 favorite adaptations. And I mean, hell, if you got Sideking doing it, oh, that's right. It's actually not even him talking about each of the 10 favorites. It's really him just giving his 10 favorites. So, 10 favorites. I had forgotten that this was in the back of this, because this was a gift from a friend. Stephen King's 10 favorite adaptations, although you have to keep in mind, this is like, when did this come out again? So it was the same time as Lisey's Story. And derp. This was very obviously a cash grab, by the way. This came out in 2009, so 10 years before. So since then, we've seen a lot of other stuff, like, you know, It and the New Pet Cemetery that's still coming, and Gerald's Game, 1922. There's been a lot of good and bad stuff. The Dark Tower. But yeah, King's 10 favorite adaptations: Apt Pupil, Cujo, Dolores Claiborne, 1408, The Green Mile, Misery, The Mist, The Shawshank Redemption, Stand By Me, and Storm of the Century. So yeah, there you go, Storm of the Century, which wasn't really an adaptation since it was written direct for screen. But that's not the important variety. But yeah, he has cool little intros for both of those, or all 5 of those stories, I should say. Get that back in. So yes, now we come to the end of the line, although I must say, here's, well, maybe I'll mention it now. So there was a viewer, CK2D, boy, I'm trying to remember, but he sent me something very interesting a while back, and I had not even understood the significance of this until I started looking just a little bit further at it. He lives in Maine, by the way. And I think I might have totally misunderstood just how important this was. I'm not sure where he found it, but check it out. It's a gift from Stephen King, an excerpt from the upcoming Wizards in Glass. Check that out. Yeah. So I looked at this very briefly when I initially, you know, was kind of breezing through things. But, so as I'm rearranging my bookshelf just now, looking at all this stuff, I opened this up and I had read the excerpt and I'm just like, oh, it's Beneath the Demon Moon, the town of Candleton, and basically if I, yeah, so this is where Susanna is kind of scurrying along. 200 wheels outside. The Falls of the Hounds. Yeah, it's an interesting little just kind of preview of Wizard and Glass. But the real important thing that I wanted to mention here is that it has a little foreword. And it appears that this foreword is signed by somebody named Slim King. Can we see? It's probably too bright to see. Well, anyway, signed in pen. A little weird. Anyway, it is hard to begin, Susanna thinks before telling her first riddle to Blaine the Mono, and if there's anything here that I agree with, Constant Reader, it's that. The Wastelands appeared 5 years ago, and the reason it's taken me so long to write Wizard and Glass can be summed up in those 5 words. It is hard to begin. And sometimes scary, too. At this writing in October of 1996, Wizard is still not done, but the beginnings, that hard beginning, is more than 1,500 manuscript pages behind me. I'm on the final leg of a very long book indeed, but I'm not all that surprised. In Midworld, almost anything is possible, and no one knows it better than I do. What follows isn't a tease, but a signal of good faith for those of you who have waited. The wait will be over next year. In the meantime, happy holidays and be good to one another in 1997. Thank you, Cy. Signed, Slim King. Really curious. Really curious. P.S. There's one unanswered riddle in here. If you know the answer, stick it on the net. I'll be peeking. I have to go back and compare this to where it comes from at the... But it's about the midway point. Well, not the midway point. About a third in to Wizard and Glass. So right when they're transferring, you know, over into, you know, Tambry and everything. It's, or at least I think. Well, it's been a hot minute, so yes, I think we get a little bit of a few different things in here, which is exciting. So I'm going to relook at that. That was the forward thing. But there's one last book that we must discuss here. Yeah, so that's one that I had to do a quick little cut ski for because of the fact that, yeah, I was on the verge of like having some Topley books. Don't want that, don't want that. So this is a very interesting compilation called Hearts in Suspension, Stephen King, with essays by college classmates and friends. So it's cool here because you have an intro from his instructor called Echoes from Atlantis, a gentleman by the name of Jim Bishop, who was, you know, a teacher of his back in the, you know, late 60s, early 70s-ish, you know, when King was actually at the University of Maine. Then you have a very cool, like, 50-something page essay from King called 5 to 1, 1 to 5. Yep, that's a Doors reference. And then it segues into the Hearts in Atlantis, which is about the kid in his dorm getting addicted to playing that particular game that's in the title with his dorm mates. And then he has this little romance with Carol, who's grown up and in college now from the Low Men in Yellow Coats. And then you get a little bit of King's Garage Truck, which was him writing for the University of Maine school paper, which is dope. And then after some illustrations, a whole bunch, I mean, old clippings if I remember correctly, different photographs. I mean, this is, if you're just into the history of Stephen King as a whole, and everything that was going on in the world when he was really, this is why he talks about the importance of being 19, is because of, I mean, just fascinating stuff like this. You've got old photographs from campus, you've got protesters, here's King actually coming back, and there's King in 1970 addressing, yeah, it's 1970, there is so much cool stuff in here. I highly recommend the hell out of checking it out. Now, I will admit that beyond the introduction from King's instructor, and then, you know, 5 to 1, the essay from King, I have not read the other half of this book, which goes up to 400 pages and has stuff from King's classmates. So you've got Room 203 and Beyond by someone named Harold Crosby, To Maine in Search of Life's Mission by David Bright, Impressions by Diane McPherson. So you've got a bunch of his classmates that knew him, and this is where I really need to take the time to read the rest of just this nonfiction thing that was actually published by the University of Maine, if I'm not mistaken. Marks the 50th anniversary of Stephen King's entrance into the University of Maine at Orono in the fall of 1966. So he was going to school in the late 60s and seeing all the shit going down, man. really, really fascinating. The Accelerating War in Vietnam, so on and so forth. But yeah, University of Maine Press, that is the perpetrator for putting this thing together. You've got kind of a cool little king in this crowd wraparound photo. So yes, once again, this is the latest, and yes, I guess maybe most personal in some ways for just digging really deep back, not as far back as on writing, but, you know, digging back into an older but transitioning into manhood king, and just his frame of thinking. And that's, you know, I talk about the number 19 all the time. I mean, it pops up in my life way more than it should. It's a weird thing, it's a cool thing. And so, yes, everybody, that was your guide to non-fiction work by none other than my favorite author, Stephen King. Yeah. So it's going to be an exciting rest of the month of February. We are a little over halfway through, and it does look like in the month of March, with the scaling back for season 6 of content, it's really up in the air, but we may be going to 1 day a week once again for Hail to Stephen King. Not determined as of yet, but that is just a possibility. Do you like it twice a week? Do you think it would be better to have it only once, and then, you know, maybe put more production? I mean, granted, you guys know this is not a really high-frills show. This is really a glorified podcast of me just, you know, talking Sideking with all of you, hopefully in a nice, impersonal, like we're just, you know, friends sitting around, you know, having a cup of coffee or a beer or something and just talking about our favorite author. That's the way that I always try to approach this show, and I hope that you appreciate that. But do you want us to continue with 2 episodes? Do you want us to go back to 1? Give your thoughts in the comments below. I have been Jaime and Fuego. You can find me on all social media sectors like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and the YouTubies. Just like you see it spelled below. If you want more of what I do that's not of the scarific variety, there is new content coming weekly, a few times a week at this point, since I relaunched my personal YouTube channel where I do everything but horror and scary genre coverage. And so yeah, if you just either Google Infuegotainment, or yeah, just go youtube.com/JaimeandFuego. I'm also on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, as I just mentioned a sec ago. Make sure to like, share, subscribe to this video here on The Horror Show, where we cover everything under the horror umbrella. We extend such a grande gracias for helping us cross over the 25,000 subscriber threshold. There was a few hundred when I joined this program 4-something years ago, so it's been really humbling and awesome to build the so-called beast with all of your help. We couldn't have done it without you. So yes, to help spread that word, make sure you hit the bell so you get all the notifications, and share this video with the hashtag Hail to Stephen King. And yes, guys, I guess also a reminder that book for the rest of this month is The Journals of Eleanor Druce, which is basically a precursor, not written by King, but relating to his Kingdom Hospital miniseries that is seeing a 10-year anniversary next month. And much like with Storm of the Century recently, I am going to be doing full retrospective coverage about that. And yes, I guess until the Wheel of Ka comes around once more, I say hasta luego, sin amigos, and constant readers alike. Join the Hail to Stephen King Facebook group if you would like more palaver, which I hope will be going down with you sooner rather than later. And say thank you, Si. And remember, stay scared and read some Stephen King non-fiction. Let's go chill out with your boy L. Right.